In this video, I want to take you through a quick tutorial on some of the language related to media buying, in particular focusing on print publications. There's some terms that you will come across and see, and I want to make sure that you're familiar with those as you're going through the exercise, as well as working on your term project. So let's get going. We're going to first take a look at pricing for magazines. And typically with a magazine, we have the front cover of a publication, which is reserved for editorial content. But as soon as we turn that page over, we have advertising opportunities. And that is going to be referred to as the inside front cover. You'll see the acronym IFC show up. Then we have all the way to the back, we have the inside back cover and the outside back cover. These three spaces in a publication tend to be charged out at a premium rate, so typically a little bit more expensive than other advertising within those publications. Typically what we will see is advertising being sold in magazines based on page proportions, and the full page is very much standard. Another term you'll see is this 4C come up, and 4C means for color, or essentially full color when it comes to printing. That is a combination of cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. These are the standard colors for any printing process. And most every magazine will use full color for their printing. So it's pretty standard when it comes to buying advertising space, but they do highlight this 4C term. Now when it comes to newspapers, newspapers will be different. Newspapers tend to quote their pricing based on black and white rates. You can still add color, but there's a premium price charge for the addition of color to a newspaper ad. So for magazines, we're going to be working with our for color. Another term you'll see is this TI. TI means times insertions. The more times that you would purchase advertising in subsequent issues of a magazine, the publisher was going to give you a better rate. So let me illustrate this with an example. I've grabbed Canadian Living as our little sample here. I've gone to Card Online. And at Card Online, I found the rate card for Canadian Living magazine. And you can see here, this is the 4C rates for the national edition. And if I'm going to buy a full page ad, and for one-time insertion, I'm going to pay $52,905. If I'm going to do that for the next issue and the issue after that, so I'm going to do it 2 times, I'm going to pay $52,905 times 2. Now you can see I start to get more of a discounted rate as I start to buy greater volumes of advertising. So times insertions is essentially over subsequent issues, not all within the same issue. So if I was going to buy, let's say, 7 issues over a period of 7 months of Canadian Living, I'd be paying $51,320, a slight discount from the standard full page rate, and I'd pay that rate times 7. So I've talked about full page. That tends to be the standard. Magazines will break up that full page and offer different rates with different dimensions of their publication. Some other standards that you'll see are a half page horizontal, maybe a half page vertical, third of a page, that may be horizontal or vertical, and quarter page. Other magazines might actually break it down into smaller portions as well, banners, eighth of a page, etc. Another standard is the double page spread. Many magazines will have a rate for this. It's often a little bit less than buying 2 full page ads side by side. So the advertiser does get a bit of a break, but it is still pretty expensive to buy a double page spread in a magazine. Another one that you'll see is the half page double page spread. This allows for editorial content above the advertising. Now, another term that you might hear when it comes to buying advertising space is this term called bleed ads, or buying a bleed in advertising. For most magazines these days, all magazines are full bleed ads. That means that the advertising goes right to the very edge of the page and actually spills over. The ad actually gets trimmed off in production as they're preparing the magazine before distribution. Now, non-bleed is the opposite term of this, and this, as illustrated, shows that the ad doesn't actually go to the edge of the page. It just comes in a little bit. Some magazines may charge a little bit less for this, but it's used less and less frequently these days. Like I said, most magazines, it's always full bleed. Now, for newspapers are never full bleed. Newspapers tend to produce advertising or sell advertising space based on non-bleed space. So let's take a look at traditional newspaper pricings. So with a typical newspaper, we're not buying so much proportions of the page space. We are buying based on total lines that we're going to be buying. So let's take a look at a full page of a newspaper. We'd be looking at the height of that newspaper, and that height is measured in agate lines. And the width of a publication is measured in columns. So now we do some math. We take the number of columns times the number of agate lines for our total lines that we'd be buying for a publication. Let's look at an example. So the North Shore News, I've looked them up on Card Online, and I've got their mechanical specifications. These mechanical specifications tend to be at the very bottom of a rate card. And I can see that for this particular publication, it's 200 agate lines and 8 columns. Now, please note, every newspaper has some type of different configuration, no matter what type of newspaper they might be. This is for a tabloid. Others are broadsheets, which tend to be a little bit taller and longer. And these can vary depending on the publisher's will. They mix it up quite a bit. So let's take a look at the North Shore News. For the North Shore News, we see that our height is 200 agate lines and our column width is 8. So we now know that if we're going to buy a full page ad in the North Shore News, we're going to be buying a total of 1,600 lines. If we're going to buy a half page, well, we just have to break that up. We'd be buying 100 agate lines times 8 columns for a total of 800 lines. And if we're going to buy a quarter page, well, we'd be down to a total of 400 lines for that purchase. So now that we have our total lines, what does that mean for our purchase? How much is it going to cost for these lines? I've gone back to Card Online, and I've gone to the rate card. And the standard basic rate is called their open line rate. And the open line rate for North Shore News is $4.28. Again, this price is going to vary from one publication to another, which is why you always have to look up these various rates. If in some situations, depending on the publication, they will offer discounts based on volume of lines that you're going to be buying. And if you know you're going to be buying over a number of weeks or a number of months, they will set up a price based on that volume that you're going to purchase. Our open line rate is $4.28, so let's do some math with that. So $4.28 times our 400, looking at buying a quarter-page ad in the North Shore News, it's going to cost us $1,715. Okay. So we use this other term, CPM, and it's come up from our textbook, and we use this term to compare pricing from one publication to another. CPM means cost per thousand. The M is in fact Greek number, thousand. So this is our cost per thousand. And the cost per thousand is a total cost of one ad insertion. So getting that one exposure of our ad. So reaching assumed the total circulation for that publication. And then we times that by 1,000. So in the case of the North Shore News, it's going to cost us $1,715. And I've also looked up on Card Online the total circulation. So North Shore News gets distributed to 58,000 people in North Van and West Vancouver on 3 days a week. So this is their Sunday reach or Sunday circulation. And we do that math and we calculate that to be $29.22. And we can now take this number and decide if we want to make this purchase with the North Shore News. Maybe we can compare it to other publications like the Courier or the Burnaby Now to see what type of value to be getting if we were going to be purchasing for those publications. So that's it. That covers a lot of the terminology and, yes, a whole lot of math related to media buying for advertising. Hope you enjoyed that video and hope you're able to make use of that for your term project.